Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's post-conference webinar, Connected Commissioning Made Easy, presented by OTTO, a BCA conference exhibitor. My name is Amy Brown, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Please note that throughout the presentation, all phone lines will be muted. This will minimize any background noise or feedback that could distract from the presentation. We will be gathering your questions throughout OTTO's presentation, and we will send them directly to Derek to follow up with you. We will also be recording the presentation, and it will be available for viewing on BCA's YouTube channel in just a few days. Today's presenter is Derek McGarry. Derek has been working in the built environment for over 25 years in a variety of roles. He has spent the past 8 years focused on the development of connected commissioning and automated functional testing technologies for commissioning providers. Derek has served on the local boards of ASHRAE and USGBC. He graduated from Cornell University with a degree in mechanical engineering and is a registered professional engineer. Welcome to you, Derek. I will now turn over the controls to you.
Thank you, Amy. And could you confirm my screen is visible?
Yes, it sure is.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good afternoon, those of us on the East Coast, and good morning, everyone else. Thank you for joining me today. Just a quick note, this is a post-conference webinar, which means that it will be commercial. It will be educational for sure, but we were happy to help sponsor the conference a couple months ago, and happy to be here today to share a little bit more about OTTO. And at the most basic level, I think it's important to point out that we are a software and services company for commissioning professionals. We are not commissioning professionals, or our company does not provide commissioning services. We empower commissioning professionals to do more using technology, make that easy for you. So today's topic is about connected commissioning made easy, and that's where we come in. Mostly we're going to focus on new construction, the context of new construction, which is pretty special, and this is what makes OTTO unique. But it also can apply to retro commissioning existing buildings, services, monitoring-based commissioning services, that type of stuff. But let's start here on traditional commissioning. The status quo that most folks employ is you create checklists, your functional test script, which takes some brain damage to put together. It's very deliberate. It's intended to be highly repeatable, but it's done manually. Nothing really wrong with that, but this topic today is about how to improve on that. Now, if we dig deeper into the details of the traditional approach, what we're talking about is meeting on site, scheduling a time with the contractor. Once they say that systems that you're wanting to test are ready for testing, then while you're sitting there on site, the controls contractor typically will override specific control system settings on your behalf, so that you can witness the systems operating hopefully the way they should be. So while you're witnessing this, you are manually recording answers to your functional questions. Does it do this? Does it do that? If you are already advanced with technology, you're likely using something like CX Alloy, Blue Rhythm, Facility Grid to help you organize all this information better. And turn it more electronic and cloud-based rather than on sheets of paper. Now, we all know what happens in this process, is you're told that systems are ready for you to come out and start testing. It's not uncommon at all for those systems not to actually be ready. So that's that item 2 on this list here is there's often rescheduling. You're rescheduling when you're going to start testing. There's sometimes you've wasted driving to the site unnecessarily. All sorts of things factor into this, but at the end of the day, not only are you not providing value with this inefficient process of hit and miss, but you're losing money in terms of your fees. So, and then unfortunately, even if you do get through a full round of testing, it's very rare for everything to work exactly the way it's supposed to. So there will be corrections that need to be made by the controls contractor, mechanical contractor, whoever, and you need to verify that those corrections were made. So is that a retest? Who pays for it? It's a very tense process. So what we're talking about today is a fresh way of doing it. This is not a brand new type of thing. I know there are folks in our organization, in the BCA, who have been working with connected commissioning for many years. But OTTO, I believe we're the first ones to make it possible for any commissioning provider to do this without having to have software developers of your own on staff, because it is a fairly serious technology. But what connected commissioning enables us to do is automate much of that acceptance phase scope. And going through a little more detail here, we're talking about recording trend data continuously, independent of the contractor. So they don't need to set up trends. I know they have their scope, usually it requires them to set up trends, but it's most common that that's one of the last things they do for you. I know at the conference, I heard a commissioning provider point out that probably only 1 out of every 20 projects does he get trend data ahead of functional testing. And this is trend data that is often required in the contract for the commissioning provider. It just doesn't happen. It's a shame, but that's what connected commissioning makes it a whole lot easier. So we're recording trend data continuously. We're able to automate overrides on the control system and a very deliberate, repeatable script, just like yours. And then we automatically answer your functional questions. No pen and paper, no entering them manually yourself. They get automatically answered. Now, the beauty of doing this digitally, doing this with technology, is that retesting does not cost you anything extra. You just essentially press a button and we're testing again. Okay, so let's go into this process, how we make it easy. First off, we got to get you connected. We got to establish remote access. In new construction, there's new challenges different than existing buildings. And that's kind of the genesis of why we use the technology we use. Got a picture of it here on the screen. I'm not sure I think they were exhibiting at BCA. I don't quite remember, but TOSIbox. It's a third-party technology that we like to use. It's got all sorts of cybersecurity built into it. I've got some bullet points listed up here on the screen to kind of show what the highlights are, what the key things are that an IT professional on the other side of the fence, the owner, the controls contractor, whoever's managing that network we want to connect to, needs to know these cybersecurity aspects before they can approve this type of connection. I will say we've gotten connected to plenty of higher ed, plenty of K-12, plenty of hospitals, plenty of corporate towers. Utilizing this TOSIbox technology is a lot of the reasons why it gets approved. But what's beautiful about this is we have built-in cellular service with SIM card. We like to use AT&T. So you can plant one of these gateways on any construction site. Well, I shouldn't say any, most construction sites in the country, and gain access to the control system using cellular. The owner's network doesn't need to be hooked up. For that matter, it makes cybersecurity less of a concern. And the controls contractor doesn't even have to have remote access. So usually when we're involved in a project with you, you're going to be the first, if not one of the first, if not the first, to get connected to the control system remotely. Then what do? We make connections to all the devices. Every BACnet control system that gets installed has an address for every controller. It doesn't matter whether it's an IP controller or an MSTP controller, downstream of a floor panel or something. It has a BACnet address. That's all we need in order to make a connection. Then once we're connected, we are able to access all of the points associated with every controller. And just as an FYI, when we typically see a VAV box controller or any terminal unit, there could be easily 100 to 150 points that show up on the BACnet network. That's overwhelming. Most people aren't aware of that, but again, we make it easy for you. We're essentially cherry picking the points that we think you want, and you're always welcome to add more or take them away. But this is just an example here of what that point mapping looks like. Then we're starting to collect trend data. So you can access trend data easily through a pull down list. We use SkySpark. SkySpark provides best trend viewer I've seen in the market compared to any control system that has their own trend viewer. They all have trend viewers built in, but for some reason they're just not as easy to work with as the SkySpark trend viewer, which I have shown up here. So a couple days after you put in this gateway, you're going to have access to 5-minute interval trend data on 15 to 20 points per terminal unit, and all your air handlers, your chilled water plant, hot water plant, whatever it is on the BAS that you'd like to see. So then the next thing we do is we run overrides. So to automate a functional test script, normally you're asking the controls contractor to say, hey, take these, the second floor, all the second floor boxes, and let's trigger it into heat. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to drop the, you're going to raise the space set points as the most natural way to do it. And people do it other ways as well, but the most natural way to do it is to raise the set points. So what you're seeing here on this graphic is an example of 3 batches of testing that we ran at a particular higher ed project, where we normally only run 1/3 of the terminal units at a time, just to create more reasonable conditions to the parent equipment, the air handler, the chill water, hot water plant. But if I know we've got one application where systems are supposed to be able to handle 100% load and redundancy, so we're running 100% of the units all at once. That's totally flexible how we run that for you, but this just shows 3 very deliberate, very well organized, very choreographed batches of testing on hundreds of terminal units. Now again, this is not the controls contractor that's doing this. This is because it is a BACnet control system. We are on the network utilizing our gateway, and we are able to make these simple overrides on your behalf to mimic your test script. Okay, and sorry, I was just looking at the Q&A there. And I'll go ahead and address that. There was a question about network speeds, the impact of this data transfer on the network. How does it impact network speeds? That's a great question. I've spent 8, almost 10 years utilizing this technology in an existing buildings context where network overloading has been a major issue, a major barrier to fault detection and diagnostics overall, major barrier to monitoring-based commissioning, is that network traffic can get can make controllers go offline, make them stutter, make floor level panels go offline, make them crash. That can cause all sorts of issues. I will say, for one, these things are adjustable. We can change polling rates, collection rates. We can change how many devices we're working on at a time. We have the flexibility when we're running testing, whether to run no more than 20% of the devices on any given MSTP trunk wiring. There's things that we can do to mitigate network traffic. But aside from those tricks we have, in the context of new construction, we have yet to encounter a control system where there's any sort of network overload as a result of doing 5-minute trending on all of these devices. That's been a blessing. And that, again, that comes in the new construction context. Old construction, new existing buildings, you've got various contractors that have been messing with things over the years, and networks become weaker. Okay, and another great question, I got to address this, is a question about when the gateway is outbound only, how are we able to do remote overrides? I love that question. I always get that question. Let me go back to that cybersecurity slide here. So outbound ports only from an IT perspective means that the communication is originating from inside the network. If you open up your web browser to Google, you have sent a request out of your network to get a response back from Google. So you are allowed to receive a response to your query back. That does not require inbound ports to be open. So that's just a little bit of a kind of confusing misnomer in the IT world. Is outbound ports only does not mean that we can't communicate back. It just means that the IT network administrator did not need to open a port for us, inbound port for us, and we're still able to do overrides. And what this creates, our device creates a encrypted VPN tunnel, so it's as if we've got our infrastructure on the network locally. Okay, I'm going to get back to a couple of these other questions at the end. Let me get through this a little bit. So we've run override scripts. Now we've exercised equipment into various modes of operation. What does generating results automatically look like? So this is kind of a log of a screenshot of a log of all the tests that we've run. You see in this case, there's actually, we ran a test on this project on August 28th, ran it again a few weeks later after some hot water system issues were resolved, then ran it a couple days later. You see that we can keep on running it as many times as you want. It enables you the flexibility to do things perhaps differently than you used to in terms of addressing big issues first, then working your way through smaller issues without having to worry about spending time doing retesting. Getting into some more details of what the results can look like. You know, if you ran an automated test on 100 terminal units and you saw in that previous screen here that there were a handful of fails answered, you know, functional questions that got fails, on all the boxes had a handful of fails. So was there anything thematic going on? So we have this tool, we just call it bulk review, simple as that, where you can look at each functional question, how many boxes got good answers and how many got bad answers. So what I've highlighted in this example is where, let's see, I guess out of 75 boxes, 69 of them had heat coils. Looks like 6 of them were cooling only, but of all the ones that had heating, we ask a simple question: is the supplier temperature within a few degrees of its design discharge temperature from your approved control submittal or mechanical schedules? The answer was no across the board. Asking a little bit easier question right below that, we ask, is heat capacity measured in the field, meaning we're looking at the airflow reading from the box, the discharge temperature from the box, the discharge temperature off its parent air handler. We can calculate thus the heat capacity live for every single reheat coil. We compare that to design. In this case, we're asking, was it at least more than 50% of design capacity? The answer was no, almost on every single one. So major heating problem. You don't need to go into the details as much. On other stuff, at this point, you may want to just focus on the heating problem. So dig in with more detail. Here is a example of a specific box and its results. And up here in the top left corner, you click on the mode you want to review. So we clicked on occupied heating mode. You see the results show up on the bottom left. There's those 2 key questions where there's a failure. Supplier temperature off the box was 56 degrees. The design temperature was supposed to be 86. You see that heating is at 100%. You know, everything else is checking off up above, and the measured heat capacity is what, like less than 5% of what it's supposed to be. Now you got all your trend data for over on the right. What we're showing is a 24-hour view. We ran this test in the wee hours of the morning, so you see all that activity on the on this where I'm hovering the mouse here. That's where we automated overrides and created these different conditions. So we were talking about heating problems. So what's going on with the heating plant? So you can dig in deeper. You got access to all the trend data off the hot water plant. Very, very convenient to have all of this at your fingertips. Now, again, just to remind you, it's rinse and repeat as many times as you want. You need to do a retest. Contractor said they solved something, or you just want to, well, shoot, for that matter, run it again 6 months later, 9 months later. To use it for a warranty period if you'd like. We're able to do. Now, talking about warranty phase, we don't see this as much over the years. We haven't seen it be highly popular, but LEED is starting to create a little bit more demand on the owner side for extended kind of warranty phase checkups. I know everybody has in their scope some sort of warranty phase checkup, but with monitoring-based commissioning technology like OTTO uses, you can use the same thing in the long term, over the 12 months, over years for that matter, if you want to provide continuous services. Leverage the technology to to magnify your value, look at more things at once because you're using the analytics to help find issues. What I've got here on the screen is what's called automated fault detection, where we automated testing in the previous slides. That is what we call active analytics. We're actively creating various modes to create conditions and see if it works out the way it's supposed to. For automated fault detection, it's passive. So we're just sitting back, we're watching the data. If certain things happen, we're flagging it as a fault. And as opposed to alarms off of a control system, these are multi-layered. They have time elements to them. It can involve what's going on with the parent air handler, what's going on with chill water loop conditions, hot water loop conditions. You can add all sorts of parameters in here to tell you when something is wrong. So that's wonderful about that. Now, that is it for the overview and introduction, and I guess walking through what connected commissioning looks like. Let's see here. We've got about 8 minutes, and I did see a bunch more questions pop up. So let's see. Go ahead. Go ahead, Amy.
This is Amy, and I was going to say, you know what, with those 8 minutes, go ahead and answer the questions.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So another question was, what is the hardware to connect remotely? For security reasons, does the owner IT group typically require you to disconnect the system from their network before tying into cellular? So there's a few things in there, but let me address this a little bit differently. So one, I'm gonna go back up to that slide that shows the device. So this is the device on the lower left. It's a handheld device. You know, it's smaller than my hand, if you will. So that gives you a sense of the size. And you connect Ethernet cable from it to the network. If the network is connected to the owner's network, we won't use cellular. We'll use the owner's internet. And they have to make a conscious decision of whether to allow that or not. Like I said, we've gotten approvals on all sorts of what people would say are sensitive sites. We've certainly gotten told no from a military site. So, it can certainly happen. But again, I'll reiterate that using this type of device, I've gotten, maybe let's call it 95% yeses, whereas in my existing buildings days where we used a different approach to connecting the buildings, we got approved probably less than 50% of the time. So this is a big difference, the type of technology this is. Now, because we're talking about the context of new construction commissioning, remember, the owner may not be connected yet to the BAS network. So in that case, they don't really care about, they care less about cybersecurity. Technically, the control system is not even theirs yet. It's still owned by the controls contractor until it's turned over. So it's a little bit different how they react to this. Now, it's normal for us to have testing ongoing when all of a sudden the owner's IT comes around, they make their connections, and we have to update some network settings on our device to work with their system. If they won't allow them to be connected at the same time, sure, we can temporarily keep the networks disconnected, meaning, you know, essentially just physically disconnect the owner's network for the purposes of testing and reconnect when we're done. So there's lots of different ways to approach this, but having the flexibility of cellular or on-site internet makes it a lot easier process. Let's see, another question, does your system store trend logs for longer term collect from the BAS, or does it rely on storage trending capacity within the BAS? So our collection and storage is totally independent of the controls contractor. We are leveraging BACnet. You put us on the network, we can see all the current values of BACnet points. So every 5 minutes, we ask for the current value, we record it in our cloud servers on AWS, and we can keep it as long as you want. I will say that a normal engagement for new construction acceptance phase testing with OTTO is usually 3 months. So once you have removed our device and turned off our service, well, we do save everything, but you won't have access to it anymore. We can also pool historical trend data if it's already stored in the BAS. That's another thing we could do. We don't do that very often, just because it might be in different intervals. It might be, you know, only 5 points instead of 15 points. But we do this independent of the contractor. Another question. Let's see here. One of the reasons that CX providers require the contractor to manipulate systems while we witness the results is because the contractor owns the systems and the responsibility to repair them should something go wrong. Correct. If the CX provider owns the OTTO device service and one of the programmed overrides causes a failure resulting in damage, isn't the CX provider then at risk for being responsible for the associated cost of repairs? Well, certainly there's truth to every bit of that. Now, I'll say that everyone involved has, well, certainly commissioning provider, certainly OTTO, you know, we have liability insurance. So that's one of the reasons for that, but we don't want it to come to that. The way this is addressed is simple. Just like you present your functional test scripts to the contractor, you are putting yourself at risk by telling them to do certain things, but you're expecting, and you probably have this worded in your script or in the specs of the project, you're expecting them to tell you if something should not be done. Same process here. We draft a script, we provide it to you to provide to the contractor. They have the opportunity to say this is a bad idea or not. If they have an issue with something that we're testing, that it could cause some sort of damage, that's their opportunity to speak up. Now, plenty of there's nothing black and white with this whole topic here, where there's always an element of risk. I will say 80% of the testing we do is on automated testing we do is on terminal units. We're talking fan coil units, the fan powered boxes, series parallel, VAV boxes, single zone stuff, water source heat pumps, where the overrides we're doing are raising set points and lowering set points and going from occupied to unoccupied. So there is a low risk element to that. Another thing to keep in mind is functional testing is not supposed to start until the contractor says and the commissioning provider agrees that pre-functional testing has occurred, including safeties and alarms, that type of stuff. So there are layers of protection that we do in any project, OTTO involved or not, and it's a discussion that needs to be had. The contractor is a stakeholder, the owner is a stakeholder. I will say in practice, again, more than 95% of our projects are getting welcomed by the controls contractor and the owner from an IT perspective. Controls contractors, their antennas will always go up when they hear about this, but all it takes is a 5-minute discussion to remind them, or explain to them that rather than sitting in a mechanical room with you for hours and hours, if not days and days, going through very tedious, repetitive, and not very rigorous testing of terminal units, where most people budget 30 to 45 minutes of time per zone, you've got OTTO running 3 to 5 hour robust test scripts with fully documented pre, post, and in between type of results. So the risk across the board, again, it's not black and white. Another question, what are we at here? 1:30. Let's see, we got to 1, 2, 3. I got a couple more questions, so I'm probably going to have to try to capture the rest of these questions and answer them directly by email if we're able to capture them, Amy.
Yes. So what I have done is I have gathered the list of questions for you to be able to answer, Derek, at a separate time. The only problem is that there's a couple of them that came from anonymous. So I'm thinking could maybe in 5 minutes, maybe you can address some of the anonymous ones. Let's go ahead and run 5 more minutes.
Sure. So someone asked about the service for 12 months versus 4 months. I stated that our minimum is 3 months, so that answers that. Another anonymous question: what if there are hidden software control points that hold, that we need to simulate something? Sure, that happens. Automated logic, they don't make all of their control points visible, so we have had to ask them to click a box that says "make visible." So yes, there's teamwork that has to happen, coordination that has to happen. OTTO handles most of that. It's not very difficult, if you will. It's just like engineering stuff. It's detailed, and we have to pay attention to details. Now, there's another great question. The same person: what do you lose by not putting your eyes on the systems? OTTO is not there to take your eyes off the systems. For one, we're giving you better eyes because you are seeing more detail than you've ever seen regarding your testing. But more the core of it, this is a supplement to your work. A lot of our clients use OTTO to run 100% testing on all the terminal units, as an example. Then they take the results, they go into the field, and they know what to look at, what to spend their time doing in the field. So it actually just transforms your field work into more productive time rather than tedious repetition. Let's see here. Another anonymous question: could you go into a little more detail on the parts of the process that are managed by OTTO versus what the CX provider has to do? So we ship you a gateway device, you go on site, you plug it in coordination with the controls contractor. We give you a text, phone, email, whatever, you communicate with us, tell us that you're doing it. Usually within 15 minutes, we see the systems, you go do whatever you need to do, move on. We can ship the gateway directly to your contractor as well, and they hook it up. A couple days after hooking it up, you'll get login credentials to us with access to all that beautiful trend data here. Then a few days after that, we will have tested our intended overrides, made any adjustments we need to make based on what's actually going on in the system in terms of is it a set point adjustment knob in the space? Is it, is there a 3-degree offset, 1-degree offset? Do we need to override limits? There's all sorts of details that we handle. Then, within a week of us getting connected, we're able to start live testing on your direction. And then we prepare the results for you, we QA/QC them, and we schedule a joint review for the first time, go through the results, and then you have access to review those results on your own time whenever you want. Let's see here. Another anonymous question: how complicated can the test strips be from a functional testing standpoint? They can get rather complicated. We, of course, have building blocks like everybody would for your test scripts, and we work off of those, but everything is adjustable. Everything sometimes needs to be adjusted for this particular project. There might be unusual modes. CO2 sequence for terminal unit box to open up all the way, or a occupancy sensor in the space that allows set points to be relaxed. All those things can be integrated now with our automated script. But there are normally things on a typical functional test script that includes physical stuff. It may include point-to-point stuff that should have been done separately, but whatever it is, every script I've seen from a commissioning provider has some physical stuff that OTTO just can't replicate. So yes, we have to be realistic here. This is a supplement that's going to take away a lot of your tedious, repetitive stuff and give you visibility you've never had before, but you still have some core responsibilities that we cannot displace. Let's see here. One last anonymous question. Are there any pre-test requirements prior to deploying OTTO? Yes and no. There are reasons that point-to-point needs to be done ahead of time, that pre-functional testing needs to be done ahead of time. Safeties should be addressed ahead of time. But just like in an existing building, we can certainly connect to a control system, change some set points, and find that it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. But that's a risk assessment that you make, and we are there to work for you. So we'll, of course, advise you on that. So, Amy, I think I'll stop there because there were still a few more questions that weren't anonymous. So hopefully you were able to capture something about those.
I absolutely captured those for you, and I will get those over to you, Derek. And I want to say thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your expertise and trying to answer some of those questions. On behalf of BCA, I would like to thank everyone for their participation in today's presentation. And please send along any additional questions that you may have to Derek or to myself. And have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Great day.